Space Wrek? How am I going to get a toe out here? Next on the CoCo Show. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the CoCo Show. Your good buddy, your good pal, Amigo Aaron. Joined this week by the Brent. Joined this week all week, every week. That's true. Now, listen, I'm not going to lie to you. It's good to be back on the CoCo Show. Like the CoCo right here. We got the CoCo. If you're listening on the radio, we got a beautiful CoCo right here sitting beside us. We're so happy to be back in the saddle of the CoCo Show. Now, and as an added bonus, like you play any CoCo game, right? We can. But that's for geeks. Oh, we're playing a CoCo game based on my beloved, one of my all-time favorite shows. We're going to be playing Space Wrek. It's loosely based on Star Trek. You know what I mean? Loosely. And so I thought this week that to get myself fired up to do this review here, we're going to talk a little Trek this week, because I never heard anybody that was into like old computers that wasn't down with the Star Trek. And if you're not, get out of the hobby. That's the way I look at it. So, when I was a kid, my dad, your dad as well,
yes,
he showed me 3 shows that affected me literally, like affected my life, my outlook, everything, right? The first one was Star Trek, the original Star Trek. Second one was The Twilight Zone. The third one was The Wild Wild West. I love these shows. I love them to this day. Star Trek, when he showed it to me as a little kid, little Aaron, it blew my mind. I love Spock. He's my favorite guy. I love Kirk. He's all man. He's the guy that you base your life on, this guy. These guys had awesome adventures in space. They drove around a spaceship. Kirk hooked up with hot aliens. They were shooting lasers. They were doing it all. It was the best show I'd ever seen in my life. Do you remember, was that the first Trek you ever saw, or did you move into the next Trek?
I mean, I was around for the original Star Trek, but I was way too young to have any real memory or joy from them. I mean, there are certain episodes.
What about now?
Well, I mean, yeah, you can go back and watch them now, but I'm talking about from when they originally aired. I remember like the Tribble episode, like that stuck in my brain.
Yeah.
But that's really it.
One episode, eh?
Well, I mean, I grew up with Next Generation, so.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the classic Star Trek for a minute. Now, you've seen the film, surely, the Star Trek. What's your favorite one of the original Star Trek?
Oh, you got to go Wrath of Khan.
That's right. Now, what's number 2?
Ugh.
Don't screw it up.
Well, if you're going...
No, your personal opinion. Don't put too much thought into it, so the first thing comes out of your mouth.
Well, the first thing that comes into my brain is whales, but that's not number 2.
Oh, what is it? So that's your favorite. That's Star Trek 4.
Yeah.
That's the wrong answer, unfortunately. The number 2, it's a very close second. Star Trek 6, The Undiscovered Country. That's the next best one. That was great. Star Trek 2, Wrath of Khan. Star Trek 6.
Wait, which was 6?
6, where they had to fight the Klingon ship that could cloak. That's when they had a disaster, screwed up. The Klingons, this is when the Klingons sort of made peace with us in this one. But there was one section of Klingons that weren't down with that. Maybe you haven't seen it. Go back and watch it.
I'm sure I've seen it, but I don't recall it.
It's great.
Vividly.
Everyone out there knows what I'm talking about. And then in the following order are the rest of the lineup. I go with Star Trek. I go Star Trek 2, then 6. Listen, I'm that guy that likes Star Trek 3. I thought it was really good. You had Christopher Lloyd as a Klingon. He did a good job. Then you got 4. Then you got 1. And then the last one, I think we could all agree on Star Trek 5, the big grand dud of the bunch, the Final Frontier, where the cast and crew of the Enterprise meet God, allegedly.
That was the worst one.
Although
God!
I will say I was amused by all the camping parts, but otherwise garbage.
Why does God need a spaceship?
Now, next question. You don't know this, but I'll ask you.
All right.
I'll just move on to another question that you do know. When you list out your favorite Star Trek franchises, your favorite shows in order, what are they? Let's go.
It'd be Next Gen.
That's ahead of, you like it more than the original.
Yeah.
Okay.
Then I'd put the original, and then Deep Space Nine. Although Deep Space Nine, boy, talk about a rough start.
Yeah, boring.
But it
got better.
It got really, really, really good. Yeah. Towards the end. Gosh. And then Voyager, and then it's just off a cliff.
Okay, so I'm going to disagree with you almost entirely. Your best show, Star Trek, the original Star Trek, with all the original cast. It's the best. Best written, best acted, the best. Next, you've got Star Trek Next Generation. I'll give you that, although that's a hit or miss show. Once you get past those two, then you're like, here's the way it goes down. I'm going to agree with you. Deep Space Nine #3, me and the old man watched the first 4 seasons of that thing. Nap time. Babylon 5 was dropping a hammer on that show.
Babylon 5 isn't Star Trek.
No, I'm saying, yeah, but they were out at the same time.
Well, yeah, but you're
listen, it's my list. So then after that, I put Enterprise. Enterprise had a great concept. It could have been a great show, but it wasn't because they crapped it up. Time travel, all this baloney, they blew it. And then Voyager, I thought that was a dud. Now, the current Star Trek, they're all crap. Don't believe the hype. Don't watch any of them. Picard, garbage. Discovery, garbage.
Apparently, Picard got good.
That cartoon, I'm not watching that.
Oh, the cartoon's funny.
No, I don't want funny. It's Star Trek. It's supposed to be serious. It's not funny.
No, it's not.
Oh yeah, it is. I don't want a cartoon Star Trek unless it's the incredible original Star Trek cartoon that came on in the 70s.
Gosh,
what do you mean? That was an Emmy Award winner. That's the truth.
It doesn't matter. That was no good.
You may ask yourself, why all the Star Trek talk? Well, 2 reasons.
That's a good question. I was wondering that myself.
There's 2 reasons. There's 3 reasons actually. 1, everybody loves Star Trek. 2, we had to have something to talk about before this game because 3, this game is a Star Trek ripoff. Let's get to it. Haunted Glove theme from Space Wrek.
To be fair, Space Wrek tries to rip off from both Star Trek and Star Wars, at least in its opening.
So, Space Wrek is the game we're looking at this week on the CoCo. Let's do a little bit of the back end of this thing. Space Wrek released in 1984 on the CoCo, and this also got a Dragon release in '85. Double trouble. Not a hard way to go. This was credited to a fellow named Steve Geeseking, who worked on Planet Invasion and another game we looked at a while back, Electron, which is a Tron ripoff. It's the best one, I think. I think it's the good one. There are 2 on the CoCo. I think that's the good one. This was published in the States by the Spectral Associates, and they're also listed as the developer.
Great name.
Yeah, it's the best. You're right. And in the UK, everyone's favorite Micro Deal put this one out.
Less of a good name.
Well, yeah, not that good. This one requires a CoCo with a 32K memory, and I'll work on pretty much all of them. I saw the cassette version. I think they released the disc version, but I couldn't tell. This one, it's funny, I didn't see a lot of ads. I found one ad for this one, and which I've got here, actually, if you'll indulge me. So Space Wrek is listed as a 3D high-res graphics, make the most realistic Star Trek game ever made. They say that in the ad. They say this is the most realistic Star Trek game ever made.
Apparently, it came out before copyright.
32K in joysticks required. Talks with the Tandy Sound Pack, Colorware's Real Talker, and Spectrum's Voice Pack. This had voice in it, which we'll get to that in a little bit. Now, before we get too deeply into this game, let's talk about the game that this violently ripped off in the true CoCo tradition of cloning arcade games. This game ripped off a game, a favorite of mine from back in the day, called Star Trek, which was the Strategic Operations Simulator. This came in a couple of different flavors. I don't think there was a cocktail of this, but there absolutely was a stand-up version and the ever-popular sit-down in the captain's chair version that goes for the big money. If you've never seen this, look it up. You've got the captain's chair. You play from the chair. It's awesome. It's an environmental cab in the grand tradition.
Well,
it is. There's no denying it. And this came out in '83. I thought this came out even earlier than that. I was surprised in the arcade. So this was a vector game. This had a lot of stuff going for it, Brent, because number one, it was Star Trek. If you had the cool chair version, you got the cool chair version. Also, this had actual speech voice call-outs. It had Spock. It was awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, this was a big deal in the arcade. Do you remember playing this? Have you ever played this one in the arcade?
I have played it, but I was a wee little lad, did not understand it, and didn't care.
Yeah, I should mention that this was a Sega joint, and this was in color vector, so it was a good-looking game. This got ported everywhere. It came home in a big way. I'm not going to go over everything, but just picture every old school system from the Apple II, the Atari 8-bit lines, all the Ataris, the ColecoVisions, the old 8-bit computers. They all got a taste of this beautiful machine. So guess who's not on that list, unfortunately, Brent? It's the CoCo. We never got a taste of anything, so we stole a taste. That's the way we read. That's the way we did it back in the day. So what you've got here, Brent, is a game that pits you as the captain of a starship as you go through the galaxy defeating bad guys, and you're also defending your various star bases, among other things. This is not a complete straight port, as we've mentioned. You've got a little extra here, which we'll get into here. This comes up with kind of a confusing opening because it replicates the scroll from the original Star Wars.
Yeah.
Including the opening lines from that.
Well, if they figure if they're going to steal, they're going to go down hard and steal from everybody.
Yeah, they're stealing from everything. And so once the scroll passes, then Space Wrek zooms up in a very delightful way.
Yeah.
And then plays the little theme there, which I like the theme. Okay, it sounded good CoCo music, multi-voice, multi-channel music. And then you're ready to go. You can hit the start button to fire this up. Now, this game is one of those games that if you pirated it, you probably didn't understand the full implications of what you had at your disposal, because you actually when you move the joystick around this thing, you move your ship left and right, and you hit forward, it'll go forward. It's sort of like, I guess, tank controls, sort of. It's normal.
Except you cannot go backwards.
They're normal controls, except you can't go backwards. Yeah, but they don't go. Although the Enterprise can go backwards, they can't absolutely do that. And when you hit the button in this, you fire your phasers. However,
no, you fire your phasers. You fire your phasers. Yeah.
However, you've got access to a bunch of other weapons that are basically
eventually
hooked to the keyboard once you earn them. We'll get to that in a minute. The screen is split up into 3 areas. You've got the upper right is all your gauges. This tells you how much shield you have left, how much power you have left on your phasers, and if you've earned any other additional things, it has that as well. The upper left of the screen is the actual high level, well above the play field, map, almost like a radar.
It's a radar. Yeah, that's what it's representing.
And this is one of the games where you can just play with that radar if you wanted to. Not even bother with the bottom. And in the bottom, let's say third of the screen is your actual your first person view. You're sitting in the captain's chair looking at the screen of what's happening in front of you, and this is sort of like the 3D area here. When this comes up, Brent, the opening, the music, what did you think of this in terms of presentation?
Obviously, my first thought was I've played this before, but I don't think I've actually played this on the CoCo before. I was remembering the old arcade game.
Yeah.
It uses its screen real estate in an odd manner. The action area, the 3D first-person perspective, is incredibly small. I think saying it brings up 1/3 of the screen is being very generous.
I think it's a third.
I think it's closer to a fourth.
Oh, get out.
And it was odd. I was thinking, man, if they're doing this, I have very low expectations for the game. And I was thankfully I was wrong. It is easy to pick up and play. I agree that if you don't have the manual, you're probably not going to be finding the buttons for your special weapons and whatnot.
Right.
At least some of them.
Right.
But the manual is a quick read. It's only 2 sheets.
Right.
And it gives you all the information you need to know to get out there and start playing the game.
Right, exactly. So, in the arcade, there's not a ton of variety to this game, if I'm honest. As much as I like the game. And the arcade does some things that this doesn't do. For example, when you start a round, it actually lowers your stuff onto the playfield in a very cool effect. There's a zooming effect as it lowers various ships on the playfield. The arcade's more colorful than this. This is basically... it's not monochrome. There's some color, but it's not. I mean, of course,
it's not going to blow you away.
This was a vector game, so I'm not going to hold that against it. And I'd say the 3D in the arcade was better. Better.
Sure.
Better, but I mean, they still do a pretty decent job. So, as a clone, I think they did a good job of capturing the spirit of the arcade. The arcade, though, pretty much every round is basically you going around blowing away Klingons. There's not a whole lot of variety. So this game, on the other hand, they shook up the formula quite a bit, didn't they, Brent?
Yeah.
Aside from the fact that you've got a star base on these maps that's on the radar. It looks like a square. When you get up to it, it sort of looks like almost like the nut off of a bolt.
Yeah, it's not detailed, but it doesn't have to be.
But if you touch it, you will earn special abilities or weapons, right? Now, some of the abilities you get are just sort of like automatic, and then some of the things you get are activatable. For example, you can dock with this thing and get photon torpedoes. Photon torpedoes fire, but you have to use the space bar. Again, so if you didn't read the manual, you'd probably never know this. You'd probably see them listed on the side of the screen and wouldn't know. You could also get mines, if you can believe that. And if you get mines, you can hit the brake key, and you'll drop mines, which is pretty slick, I think. If you've gained the warp drive capability, you can hit enter when you have it, and your ship will speed up like a turbo, basically.
Yep.
You can also replenish shields. You can also replenish your lasers or your your phasers. Thank you. You also in this game can repair. When you go to the star base, you can also repair damage that happens to your ship.
Yeah, it's all automatic.
But get this: your radar can be damaged. You could have damage to your shields. This stuff could all be. So I like that. None of this stuff that I recall was in the arcade. I don't remember any of that. I think you could get you would get healed at the base, but you weren't getting like cool extra stuff, which is cool.
And a few things you didn't mention.
Yeah.
You can pick up extra ability to turn.
Yeah.
And that is.
And you can be a little faster.
And that is crazy important. It's. You don't realize how slow your ship is to bank until you see how nice it is to have those extra turn power-ups. And I believe the power-ups are random.
Excuse me.
And you have the ability to get them once per level. Some boards have multiple bases, so I guess it's really once per base, and you just run into the base to grab them.
Yeah, and what's neat is the bad guys will go over and start firing on those bases.
Yes.
So you've got to go save the bases.
And they won't give you upgrades while they're under attack.
Now, one of the additional things I think is really neat about this game is that it changes, the different phases change up. So sometimes you're just going around shooting bad guys. You'll say 5, 6, maybe 10 ships you got to go kill. Then occasionally you'll have to blow up asteroids. You'll be in an asteroid field. Mm-hmm. They'll have ships that drop mines, and you have to chase. There's one, I think it's a level 4. We have to find this guy, and he's fast. And he drops some tons and tons of mines.
Yeah.
Sometimes you'll shoot stuff they split off and they're separate. You have to go after them. So they mix it up quite a bit. And if you consider that also, sometimes you're going to be down without a shield or without a radar. Your shields are down. You're running out of phasers. It makes it a lot more. There's a lot more of a challenge there.
Yeah.
What do you think? Having played the original, what do you think about the extra additional items that's got put in?
Well, it's hard for me to comment on the original because it's been forever since I played it. But this has just enough little bonuses, just enough little quirks. Because when you pick up the mines, you're actually like, oh man, I would rather have speed or turning.
Yeah.
And it's a fun upgrade system for just going to the base and you get these upgrades. The game, can I talk about the game proper? I'm
sure, go ahead,
here.
get in there.
This is a really well thought out game.
Yeah.
Having different ships that take different damage. Sometimes you can shoot a ship and it won't destroy it, it'll just disable it, and you can see that by changing colors. So you still have to land the final blow to destroy the ship proper before you'll be able to leave the level. And if you didn't figure it out, you have to kill everything before you advance to the new sector.
Yeah.
I think that's really neat. I think that having the bases where you can get the power-ups is really neat. I think having the photons, which are just basically bombs, that you don't have to hit the enemy directly on. You can be a little off and they'll blow up.
Yeah.
They don't give you a ton of them, which makes you want to save them. I think that's very well thought out. Also, just the whole flow of the game. You've got some things, ships, or maybe you've just broken parts off of something if you got to chase those down. they will be screaming across your radar.
Yeah.
And you've got to try really hard to catch up with them, and you can't just follow behind them. You've got to start working on cutoff paths.
Yeah, because the screen wraps.
Yeah. And it's
both ways.
And it's a lot of fun to get in there and do that. Now, we were talking a little bit before the show, Aaron. You said that you never got past the mine layer.
There's a level where this guy is
level
real
4.
fast.
I'm pretty
and he
sure it
jumps
is
mines,
level 4.
And that guy was tough. But I know I was reading, and you got further than that.
Yes.
So what did you give us, Phil? Because there's other things that happen later on.
Yeah. There are several different types of stages. For the mine layer, if anyone's having a problem with it, do not shoot the mines.
Yeah, I learned that.
Because they will blow up next to you, and even if you think you're far enough away, they're still going to do damage to you. So be real careful with that. You have to just track that guy through the minefield, and that's such a nice breakup. I consider that like a boss stage. They don't really have bosses per se in this, but for me, level 4 is the first boss stage.
Yeah.
Because you have to fight that battle in such a different way.
I love that, by the way, because it took me back to the show.
Yeah.
You know, like something like they fought a really fast ship in one of these shows, and what they had to do eventually, Kirk played dead. And then when the ship came to investigate, he blew it away. It was a great episode. So, yeah, that was precedent to it. It took me back. I like that they added that extra stuff. Did you see, because I read that there was there's a cloak ship that attacks you, and you get to the point where there's like multiple star bases, multiple everything.
Yeah. I did get to multiple star bases. I don't remember a cloak ship, but I might have just not realized it was that was what was going on. The shots, they don't give you a crosshair.
Yeah.
And in a way, I'm glad. In a way, it kind of sucks. Obviously, crosshair will allow you to be a little more accurate with your shots. But you can shoot these crazy distance shots, and there is a point to where your phasers are no longer effective. It's not like you just shoot them and they go on forever. And you start realizing just quite the depth you can get and still hit an enemy.
Yeah.
And you start setting up these sniper shots, and it feels good and it's fun to do. You'll have times when you think, man, I'm just going to pull up to this guy. It's the last guy on the stage. I just want to move on. And if you just sit there nose to nose with someone, most ships only take one shot. But when you get shot by them, they hurt. They hurt really bad. So you can't just bully through the game. You have to really be strategic on how you approach the enemies and how you engage them. And I thought that was a lot of fun.
Well, that's the way it should be. This is not the Death Star. I mean, the Enterprise is tough, but it's not indestructible. And I like that. I like the elements they added. In fact, I'm going to go on record here. I like this. I think this is more playable than the arcade game. I like this way better, just because there's more stuff. Now, graphically, for a CoCo game, I think it does the job. Audibly, you hear lasers. You don't hear anything except for that musical tune. That's pretty much. There's not a lot of sound. And there's not a lot of color, but they do render everything in a pleasant way, and the 3D is surprisingly effective. Stuff will tumble, and it looks cool. I mean, it's for the CoCo, I think you get a pretty good graphics there in that bottom third. I think it's a pretty tight ship down there.
Yeah.
I like pretty much the aspects they added with the gameplay. I like this. I think it's a top shelf game. And I'll be honest with you, I wasn't expecting this to be. I think I played this when I was a kid, but I didn't fully grasp the game.
Sure.
But as an adult, I found this quite enjoyable. I played it quite a bit this week.
Yeah, you get a lot for your action, a lot of bang for your buck for what the CoCo can do.
Yeah.
And it's not visually impressive, but it also is. And I know that's very contradictory to say, just on its own statement.
Yeah.
You're not going to see a screenshot of this and go, oh, that's pretty cool graphics. And you're not going to sit down and be in awe of the graphics. But the scaling is really nicely done. When you see it in motion, when you see how a spaceship actually will turn, and it feels like it's turning, like the bad guys, it feels like it's got that kind of arc motion with it. I really enjoyed how this looked, feels. The sound, I think they could have done a little bit more with. There are explosion sounds.
Yeah, I don't know what the limitations were working with the 32K or
sure.
You never know, but I mean, I will say just the fact they added a little tune in there, I appreciated that. I should mention I played this on normal, but you could also our good buddy El Curtis Boy, all hail. early on it said, listen, if you load this thing up and type in poke 65497, in there, you will get a speed up. This thing is not frame locked, and so you'll get a speed up on. I did try this. It does speed it up, but I will say the original speed was fine for me. I didn't have any problem. So if you want to play it faster, you can. If you don't have to. But the option's nice to have there if you want to do that. And you can go over to Curtis's site to get that if you don't want to write it down to me saying it. In terms of reviews, was actually found, there's a website I go to quite a bit called the Ice People, and they review CoCo games, and they reviewed this one. I'm going to read what they wrote here. Ice People gave this a B. They said, an adoption of the coin-op Star Trek game, which is better than I expected. If not completely faithful to the original, it's a good 3D space shooter, and one I certainly would have spent time and money on as a youth had I known about it, but this is 1984 Spectral Associates game, completely escaped my notice at the time. Like the arcade, shoot down waves of attackers, protecting your bases and docking with them in order to keep your shields charged up and ship in reasonably good order. You keep track of everything using the radar screen for the most part, while another part of the screen keeps you updated on things like shield strength and weapon levels. The Star Trek game was vector-based, and the CoCo's graphical abilities are a good match here. The action is fast, and the sound, while minimal, is nice. Has a nice muffled effect that gives it an authentic deep space feel. Not the best arcade clone from this company, but definitely one of its better efforts. And I'd say that's a pretty positive review there.
Yeah, I would say that's fair.
We also had some people from the Discord chime in, bro, which I always like to see. We'll start the party off here with Pajako. He writes, this is my cup of coffee review. Sadly, I didn't get much time to play this one, but what I did play I liked. Firstly, the blatant copyright infringing text scrawl for Star Wars. Then we have the opening part of the Star Trek theme song, awesome, with double thumbs up. He liked that. And really what we need here is a game, and really what we have here is a game heavily inspired by Star Trek, the arcade game for Sega. But strangely for me, this ended up feeling more like Battlezone mixed with asteroids. None of this makes Space Wrek a bad game, far from it. It's a perfectly playable arcade game. It runs at a reasonable clip, and all honesty, probably could have easily been marketed as an official port of a Star Trek game, and no one would have complained. The 3D part is only done on about a third of the screen, which helps performance. My only comment of note is that there were objects that I could never seem to catch up to, and had to go in the opposite direction and loop back around the map to get at them. He clearly didn't get the warp speed. But something fun to stick on for 30 minutes, to have a blast, and then get on with something else. No score on this one, does not have a fair crack at it, but I would urge anyone wanting a good game on the CoCo to check this one out. So I'd say that's a positive review from Pajako. Drone Doctor chimed in. The Doctor is in again. He chimes in and says, played in the web browser emulator using the CoCo 3 speed up trick from the Discord and used a keyboard for input. Nice overhead radar view and first person in-ship view. The latter reminds me of some Star Raiders on the Atari 8-bit. Graphics are decent for the platform and the time. Kind of a combination of asteroids and Battlezone. I couldn't figure out how to, or if you can, thrust. So I sat in the middle of there and rotated, fired on enemies. Oh, man. Poor Doctor. Some of the enemies break into smaller ships a la asteroids. The 3D-ish line art reminds me of Battlezone. Fun game till you run out of ammo. High score I could get was 3200. I give this a 6.5 out of 10. What do you think about that? I never tried just sitting in the screen and just looping around.
I did. It's a lot more fun. I hope Drone Doctor actually goes back and fiddles with this a little bit more. It's so much more fun to get out there in the action.
Yeah, I agree.
Flying around.
Finally, to round us out, the one and only L. Curtis Boyle, who writes in, this is worth trying on a CoCo 3 at double speed as it's not frame lock, which you mentioned earlier. But even at CoCo 1 and 2 speeds, I always like this one. Having been a big fan of the Star Trek Strategic Operations Simulator arcade game, like the arcade original, it splits the screen into 3 sections. The main difference is the local top-down map view and the spaceship status are swapped left to right, and the top-down map is smaller than the arcade version. That's a good catch. I didn't even notice that. Unlike some other ports on the 8-bit machines, Space Wrek actually uses 3D wireframe style graphics rather than zoomed up 2D sprites like the arcade. One has to make sure that they have read the manual too. While the game can play on a single button joystick and get fairly far that way, there are other weapons and keyboard controls for warping, lane mines, photon torpedoes, make it a little awkward, but they're necessary with a one button stick. The later levels include asteroid fields, a saucer that zips around and lays mines, cloaked ships that you can only see with your 3D view screen but not on the radar, and ships that can blink in and out of space in different positions, and possibly even more. So every few sectors, the game gets new things added to it, multiple space stations for recharging as well, keeping it interesting as the player gets better. The sound is serviceable with good explosions, a little bit of the Star Trek theme at the beginning, but simple. Being a Star Trek nut, I always loved this game. I've yet to try this with the sound speech pack. I didn't have one back in the day when I played this game quite a bit. 8.5 out of 10. That's one thing that's on my to-do list. Maybe at Boat Fest is to hook this thing up with get the old multi-tap out and hear what this sounds like. I couldn't find any video of this with the speech pack on it. I looked all over, and apparently it's unemulated as well. So that'd be one I'd like to hear. But hey, I think this thing got over pretty well, Brent.
I think this was a really fun game to play.
Any final thoughts on this one?
Even if you don't have interest in Star Wars or Star Trek or Star anything, this is worth giving a shot if you just like vector graphics and vector play. I thought it was real fun.
Yeah, I think this is a real good rendition of this particular game. And that was actually, I'm not going to lie to you, big surprise on how much I enjoyed this one. So that's all we got this week on Space Wrek. I would like to say that we appreciate everyone for moving over to our new retro rotation. Hold up your sign, Brent. Show everybody your cool sign. We have we're just about ready to finish up on this, but thanks everybody for supporting us on the CoCo Show and the other shows that we're doing on the retro rotation. That's great, Brent. Brent's spinning his sign now. Put the sign down now. You're done with that. I would like to say we'll be back for the next CoCo Show. We're resetting up our game selection committee. We've picked a new head man, and we are going to get back into the rotation on that. So we don't know what the current game for the next show is going to be, but it will be something fun and special. Now, for those people that are watching the rotation, next up in the rotation, the Brent, we're back to ARG Presents.
Yes.
Now, last time we talked about ARG, we had just done funny games.
Yeah. Funny
games. It went out like as a lead balloon. We never should do that ever again. Some people, there are some shows of the strength, the wit, the good looks of the host can carry the show, but we're not one of them. This is a subject-based show. If people don't like what you're talking about, they drop you like a bad habit.
Well,
but that's okay.
If any show's gonna fail, I'm glad it was funny.
Now, do you remember what our upcoming show is going to be about?
Yeah. Dirt games.
Games involving dirt.
Yes.
In some capacity, but they will not be X-rated.
No. Wrong kind of dirt.
Oh, I'm sorry. So next week, next Sunday, tune in for ARG Presents. We'll be talking about games featuring dirt.
Yes.
Should be a good one.
I'm excited. It's going to be fun.
Any final thoughts to Brent?
Nope.
I think we can agree on one thing when I say, all hail.
Me?
L. Curtis Boyle. And now you've got to deal with him. See you later, everybody.